Our minds and our bodies are intricately connected. We cannot separate them. Medicine back in the day decided that mechanistic principles, the principles of our minds and our bodies, did not need to be together, that it only had to do with how our organs functioned and how the rest of our bodies worked. And so medicine easily dismissed most problems to just be in the head, when ultimately our minds and our bodies are intricately connected together. And so what we want to do is make sure that you start to understand that healing, health, happiness come from a well-balanced understanding of the laws of our bodies, the laws of our minds, and the laws of our souls. As we get through the year, we're going to continue to bring you two polar opposites, two opposing views or ideas that can start to bring into effect how do we play life? How does life happen to us, and how are we affected by all those instances? So I want to kind of dig into this a little bit with you guys. I want to see here. Yes, perfect. Let's first mention that throughout the year, we're going to go over this book. This is a total health handbook. This was written by a Dr. Thurman Fleet. He was a chiropractor who understood that patients who were coming into his office typically had problems that were due to the fact that they were ignoring the laws of nature. And those laws that govern our minds and our bodies and our souls were ultimately some of the reasons that they were sick. And so my job is not to necessarily just adjust you, but is to make sure that you understand what factors cause your problems and how to not get back into that situation in the first place. This Total Health Handbook is a simple way to go through some of these things with you, and we're going to go through them piece by piece. In the beginning of the month, we're always going to talk about the laws of the body. There are simple laws of the body that we all probably understand, but need to, how would I say, experience and live forth. One of them is our nutrition, the laws of nourishment. There's the laws of movement. There's the laws of sanitation, how cleanly our bodies are internally and externally, and also rest. Those are the 4 laws of the body. We'll go through those throughout the first Tuesdays of usually the month, and we will kind of spend certain time on the laws of the body. The laws of the mind and the soul need to be addressed in the sense that our bodies are going to be affected by our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions. And that's what we're going to always take care of on the 4th Tuesday of every month. So that's what I want to make sure that we bring today is how those things are affecting us. I'm going to do something to this thing real quick. Okay. Very good. Okay. Let's dig into this a little bit. Number 1. If your body is not as healthy as you'd like it to be, we need to start to ask ourselves certain questions. It's very important that we start to understand things. There's a story, very simply put, had to do with a businessman who was doing everything he could to try to understand his craft. But he found that when he wanted to get a promotion, that they were going to require him to do some extra training. And it was quite expensive. And he asked someone that was ahead of him and said, hey, how do I move up in this company? What do I have to do? I can't spend this $5,000 in order to get this programming degree that I would need in order to move up. And his mentor said, you may never understand the cost of your ignorance. If he doesn't spend the money to become more knowledgeable and advance himself, he's costing himself every day. Our health is no different. We need to invest in our health. If we don't invest in our health and start to learn more about how to take care of ourselves and our bodies, we don't understand the cost of our ignorance. Our ignorance costs us. And if we start to stay small focused and only say, well, I'm just going to move in this way because it doesn't hurt, or I'm only going to do these exercises, we're missing the big picture that I want to share. And that big picture is that there's more than just the way we move. There's more than just the way we eat. There's more than how well we rest. There's more than just how we think, too. But all together, these things stacking together can start to stack together a health, happiness, peace, and prosperity. And that's what we want for you. I want to start off by asking some simple question here. Let me see if I can get this out. There it is. So I want you to kind of, if you have a piece of paper, I want you to rate yourself on these things, or you can kind of maybe mentally do this. But I'm going to ask you a simple questions. There's going to be 6 of them, and I want you to rate them from 1 to 7. You on a piece of paper or just in your mind, but it'd be best to do it on a piece of paper. I want to ask you, and this is, you don't have to share this with us, me, or anybody on this call. This is just for you. But I want you to realistically and honestly ask yourself, if 1 is basically not at all or never, and 7 is always, then you've got 1 and 2 being less likely or never or a little bit seldom. 4 would be occasionally, and 7 would be always. You can fill in the numbers. So you got 1 to 7. Okay, 7 would be always, and 1 would be never. Put yourself in the somewhere in those numbers. So I want you to ask yourself, to what degree or extent do you desire to be noticed or praised? I want you to understand, as we're asking these questions too, to just be honest with yourself. The only thing that we hurt is lying to ourselves. Number 2, at what degree or extent do we desire approval, others' approval of our ideas and our actions? Number 3, what degree and extent do we like to be the center of attention? Number 4, what degree or extent do we like to be different from others? Do we like to dress differently, speak differently, do different experiences? What extent do we like to be different? Number 5, to what extent do we boast about our accomplishments? Number 6 is, to what extent do we boast about our possessions? And number 8, or 7, that is, what extent do we like to appear as an intellectual person? So you tallied that up 1 through 7. Just give yourself a moment to think about that, and maybe you can add up your numbers real quick if you'd like. We're going to do another questionnaire at the end, all right? But if you want to tally up your numbers, go right ahead. No need to share them to me either. There's no doubt that each of us is vain to some degree. Vanity is probably one of the earliest forms of attention that we had tried to get early on in our lives, and probably the hardest to get rid of. Vanity is a boastful pride and a self-centeredness that are poor tools for acquiring peace and security essential for happiness. Ultimately, our want to have attention, to get praise, is kind of a backwards way of trying to find happiness and other people's admiration. Vanity comes in all forms, but is a form of pride. But we can be proud without being vain. There's nothing wrong with that. Because on the other end of the spectrum, as we talk about vanity, we also want to talk about aspirations. Because when we aspire for this guiding power that directs us to strive for loftier things, that is something that brings us to a higher elevation, that takes away stress and concern in our lives when we aspire. When we just hope for others' attention and we try to boast and show it off, we are bringing ourselves to an energy level that is lessened. So there's these 2 opposing ideas here that I want to explore a little bit more. Usually, as we tend to be more vain or self-centered, we tend not to contribute to society, and we don't tend to cooperate with others. We want to glorify ourselves rather than glorify others and support others. Some people have limitless ambitions, but they don't aspire for much. The sole object of some people is to outdo another in order to gain personal distinction. Ultimately, this exaggerated ambition tends to result in a feeling of inadequacy and inevitably leads to the individual being frustrated or even defeated. When we start to turn the tide and look at what it takes to aspire, this is where I want to spend the majority of our time. In life, we are motivated to a more exalted life. And the more often we're able to do this, the less likely we are to be vain. We want to achieve. We want to obtain. Each of us, whether consciously, is evolving toward perfection. We are conscious or not, we are all trying to evolve toward more perfection. That's the divine plan. We should not lose hope if we do slip backwards in our upward climb toward perfection. The axiom of philosophy states that nothing stands still. We are either progressing or regressing. Our health and our life is constantly this battle. We're either progressing into an improvement in our health and our life, or we're regressing. We don't just stand still. Some people say, hey, doc, I'm feeling pretty good. I just want to pause and see if we can't maintain. That is a very slippery slope. Our bodies very rarely can just maintain without effort. Effort of time and energy and money put toward the right things brings out better in us and brings out a healthier body. That's why we're talking about aspiration. If all we want is attention and other people's praise, that is very short fleeting and does not usually bring us to a healthier place. So remember, when we make choices every day, we're either progressing or regressing. That's a very, very important point. I want to ask a couple or bring in a couple questions that I'd like you to maybe think about or write about later on, not this moment. But there's a couple questions that I think might bring to light where you are in this process and how do you improve on our mental states. There's some very basic questions that really do need answered in our lives. And if we're going to be at a higher level of health and healing and vitality to support and give to others, there's a couple things we must ask ourselves. Where do we come from? Why are we here? What is the purpose of our being? Where are we going? Do we live after the demise of our bodies? If so, what then? To answer these questions truthfully helps us to get what we call a view or a lens in which we need to see our lives. If we don't know these answers, we can start to kind of break this down a little bit and start to be honest and analytical with ourselves and say, do we or do you control your own mind? Do we control our own minds? Do we think our own thoughts? Do we know whether we think our own thoughts or not? Do we even know? How often do we get angry? Do we criticize? Do we have ill feelings toward others? Is there anyone whom we cannot forgive? Do we get irritable? Do you yield to disturbing influences? The fact is that we all struggle with things throughout our lives. All these at some point in our life can be a struggle. But the more that we can answer these truthfully and start to work toward improvements, our bodies, our minds, and our health will be better. Ultimately, we want to be wide awake, calm and content, happy at all times, and under all conditions. But those things don't just happen for us. They take work. The first step is just being here to understand that our life and our health demands us to think about some of these things, to challenge our minds and our bodies to understand what it is we need to follow. Do we know what the laws of nature are? Are we following them? If we go through this year, if you get this book, you will start to understand those laws and you can start to critically ask yourself, how much am I aspiring for or how much am I looking at vanity? It would be unwise for us to attempt to purge our nature of egoism. We are and can be self-centered, for sure, and similar traits as if they were so many demons. We can't think we can just purge ourselves of all that drags us down, in especially moments. We should recognize the false and destructive nature of traits that don't help support us, vanity being one of them, and endeavors to redirect such tendencies. We need to divert them into channels of social, useful effort. If we can start to understand and realize our thoughts and our feelings, we can start to understand where they come from. Digging deeper into some of these questions allows you to understand, number one, who are you? Where are you from? And what is it that you want to achieve? All of this disruptive tendencies that tend to influence our conscious lives, vanity is one of the first to make its appearance. Those destructive tendencies are very hard to subdue. So don't be hard on ourselves. One of the first people we need to forgive is ourselves. We need to understand that we have evolved to who we are based on our experiences and our education. And as we were young, we were hitting the record button for everything that was happening without paying any attention to what was right and wrong and what was good and what was going to serve us as we got older. So a lot of times when our bodies get under challenge, we start to act like that 8 or 9-year-old that learned how to react to get certain things done. But we have the chance to be better than that. We want to progress, not regress. But being stuck there is the first sense of understanding that maybe we are. And true and lasting happiness is going to come from within us. It's not going to come from outside. In chiropractic, we have a saying. It's called ADIO. It means above, down, and inside out. This is how healing happens for all of us. When you get an adjustment, and you start to make changes in your health, you are starting to make changes from the inside out. The more we can connect to our spiritual nature, the faster and more efficient our bodies will heal. And this is why we must understand that we can't influence ourselves from the outside in. Medications can be useful at times, but don't ever fix the problem from within. They come from the outside in and suppress us. They limit our ability to express ourselves. They may help a symptom, but the ultimate cause is deep down. We are our best physicians. Internally, we have the power that made us, can heal us, but we need to allow it to express itself. When we subdue and compress and interfere with that power that made us, we will be sick. We will be unhealthy. We will have pain. The most simple state tonight is just to understand that there are ways that we see the world, the ways we react to others, and the ways that we try to get attention that could be diminishing our ability to express ourselves. Ultimately, health and happiness are not achieved by these destructive emotions or habits. Ultimately, our ability to serve others, to accept others, and to be patient with ourselves first and others as well gives us the ability to know that we are not in control. But when we live according to our laws, we start to be better. There's so much in these books to evaluate, but I just want you to start to think about some of these things in your day-to-day life. This is the last small set of questions that you can rate yourself on. There's only 4 of these. What degree or extent do you desire to be the best in life? 1 to 7. Mark yourself 1 to 7. What degree do you desire to be the best in life? To what degree or extent do you expect the best in every situation? To what degree or extent do we act as though nothing happens by chance? To what degree or extent do you feel that life will get better? If we can start to push ourselves more toward the 7 on those questions and more toward the 1 on the other questions that we asked initially, your body has the vibrancy to withstand many stressors in life. we typically teach about a lot of habits that are healthy to do on these fourth Tuesday of the months. Some of them are journaling, which I would suggest you maybe journaling about some of those questions. If you didn't get all those questions when you come in, we'll give them to you. We'll print them out that I had talked about. Journaling is wonderful. One of the simplest things is giving gratitude every morning. When we can be grateful and gracious for what we do have and what we expect to get, our bodies are at a level at which we can handle more of the stressors upon us. Chiropractic has always been holistic, understanding that the mind and the body are one. And in order to express true health, they must be intricately connected. In this day and age, it's so easy for our bodies to not be able to adapt to all the stress that's on us. When you are adjusted, even just the adjustment itself helps your body to adapt better. We all are going to have stresses from many areas in life. The most basic are stress and our thoughts, chemicals and toxins in our environment, and physical stressors, the way we sit and move and lift, bend. Those areas start to beat us down. But if we can adapt to some of those, we do not have to become subluxated and in ill health. How do we prevent subluxations? We start to follow these laws. We start to move well. We start to think well, and we start to eat well. This is one deep dive into this small aspect of aspiration. My hope is that you aspire to make some changes in how you address certain situations throughout the day. Can you start to live with an understanding that life is there for you, that it can be better? I know